diagrams of, possible increase or perfection in the world. But there isn't the whole picture of what an ultimate eternal life might be, I think. There's little evidence in Leibniz's philosophical writings, that he takes seriously, I think, what I take to be the Orthodox Christian position. So.
Great. Now, we are absolutely going to end at 4:45, so we will have questions until then. Start over here. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. As far as I understand, I think Leibniz holds both that the Christian religion is the true religion and that knowing about Jesus Christ is not necessary for salvation. So I would like to distinguish more sharply claims about the truth of the Christian religion in relation to merely, as a way to say, universal religion, and soteriological considerations. And I think that it is very clear that if we are talking about soteriology, Leibniz thinks that to know about the Christian religion as the true religion is not a necessary condition for salvation. But I think that is very different from saying that the true religion is a universal religion.
So may I just follow up there and ask you, when you say the true religion, what proposition are you attributing to Leibniz there?
Yeah, I think as far as I understand is that according to Leibniz, the Christian religion is the religion which gives us the fullest conception of God, of what God is, of what salvation is, of what the afterlife is. In this sense, is the true religion in giving us a set of truths which we could not reach simply by our rational forces, the natural rational forces. And these, as we know, these truths are not in competition, but are in conformity, but still they are the above reason set, which by definition cannot be fully grasped and even less discovered by our natural forces. So I think Leibniz, on the one hand, holds that Christianity gives us a fuller understanding of God, and therefore revelation is necessary in this sense, in giving us a fuller understanding that otherwise we wouldn't have. But on the other hand, if we look at the soteriology, the knowledge of these truths is not necessary for salvation.
Yeah, and when you say it's particularly the incarnation and the Trinity that are going to be critical in defining what that truth is, right? That Jesus Christ is in fact God. Yeah, and that God is triune, and that there is a divinity of Jesus, and so on. These are all truths that we could not discover by reason, but that give us a fullness of what God is. Yeah, no, I think that's helpful.
Yes, I'd like to ask you a question about the first part of your paper, the part that once, I think, is arguing that the divine grace should be thought to reduce to God's choice of circumstances. And I'm wondering whether that way of trying to cash out divine grace is going to sit well with what Bob has very nicely put as his mature commitments to the thesis of spontaneity and the world apart thesis. Because one would think that for the notion of divine grace reducing to choice of circumstance to make to do the work that it wants to be doing, you would have to think that the individual, the same individual, could be placed in different circumstances, and the different circumstances affect the individual in certain ways that they develop differently. But given the thesis of spontaneity and world apart, it's not as if that can happen within the mature Leibnizian system. So I was wondering whether you might have something to say about that.
Well, I've thought of this problem, and it certainly is, I think, the way you put it was nicely, that, could you think of the same individual place in different circumstances? The answer has to be no, right, from a Leibnizian point of view. Is there enough content associated with the notion of an individual, or of this individual, I mean, whether it be Leibniz or Arnaud or me or whatever, such that we can, do the kind of work we needed to do with thinking about counterparts and what would happen to that sort of person were they in that situation, such that we can understand that being in this situation, they achieved a certain degree of perfection, that core of that person in another circumstance, and thereby obviously being a different person, they would have had a different life. I mean, I think that Leibniz does enough of that kind of arguing in his other writings that he's willing to think about what would be different for for a person under different circumstances, that he's doing something similar in this sort of case here. I mean, look at the example that he gives, right? I mean, he takes the case of the two twins as being in effect talking about the same individual placed in different circumstances, right? Obviously, they're not the same individual, though. So the point of I think he thinks he's making a certain argumentative point there by thinking about identical twins who have the relevant powers are the same in the two. They have the same, he's assuming for the sake of argument, the same power of good willing and of understanding. And one is existing in this, has this history, this fate, and another has this fate, and that accounts for the difference in their ultimate degree of salvation, or the ultimate possibility of salvation or happiness at the end. So, but I agree with you. I mean, if we really push on this point about the sense in which the circumstances become different and how that affects their life, we're going to have problems of the sort that you indicate.
So you said page 36, I just read, for Leibniz then there is an ineliminable element of faith or rationally unfounded belief that must support our confidence in the government of God and hence our love of God. And you said that after the quotation of section 44 in a preliminary discourse, and the distinction between seeing and believing. And it's quite surprising because in the same paragraph, he said just before the quotation you made, that Leibniz said that we don't need to have the revealed faith to know that there is a unique principle of things which is perfectly good and wise. The reason teaches that with demonstration that are infallible. Sorry for my English. So what I just want to say that our belief is rational, is founded on rational foundation. That is what the reason can teach us about the principle of thing about God. That what we don't know is in particular the particular reason of the existence of a particle evil. We don't know what is the link between a particular evil and the whole harmony. So I think our belief is rational, who has based in rational statements, but we ignore only. We cannot see all the universal harmony. So the difference is we don't have to make a confusion between our ignorance, that is that why this evil is permitted, and the knowledge we had that in general this particular evil is permitted for good reason, but we don't know what is this reason. I'm not sure I'm very clear, but the difference is between our ignorance and the rationality of God's conduct.
Okay, so I mean, I take it this picked up with things that you were talking about in your lecture. So I certainly, I have Leibniz believes, whether it's absolutely certain or not, I have the knowledge that God has acted for the best, that this is the best of all possible worlds, that everything is organized for the best. And then I take it that I am presented with some particular fact of such and such thing having happened, whether it's some injury to me or a loss of a loved one or some other thing. And I'm asking, how could this, is this for the best? Is this actually for the best, this particular fact right now? And it's true that I can sort of avert to my prior intellectual knowledge and say, yes, it must be for the best, but there's a certain kind of dissonance that then cognitive dissonance that I'm then faced with, right? I know that in some intellectual sense.